Hi, I'm Micki Carroll, and I'm here today with mythographer and astrologer Kat Williams. We are Cat and Mouse Astrology. Hi, Kat.
Hi, Micki.
Welcome, all of you. We're going to talk today about the full moon, even though it's just past the black cherry full moon. It's just about not even 48 hours past the black cherry full moon, so we're still in its beautiful grip.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing wrong with being in the grip of some black cherries, in my opinion. But anyway, how's the full moon going for you so far, Kat?
It's been pretty good. It was my birthday on the full moon, so that was nice. It was nice to have a full moon with Jupiter birthday.
How expanding and aware.
It was nice. I went to the sauna.
Ooh,
Yeah.
yeah, expanding the skin and getting some sensual awareness.
Yeah.
Sounds really nice. Well, I think I'll pull up the chart for everybody to take a look at. And can we see it?
Yep.
Oh, good.
You want to shrink it a bit?
Yeah, I will. Let's bring it down. Oops, that was the wrong direction. Take her down a little bit. There we go. And I'll blow it up again later. Okay, so we've got a really kind of a lovely moon here in Aquarius conjunct Jupiter, as Kat just pointed out. And it is, of course, opposite the sun. That's what a full moon is. That's what the red line signifies. It's also rather coming into a situation where these planets are going to be an angle to it as well. So we'll talk about all that in just a minute. And I'll point out that this full moon might be exposing how greater emotional awareness can help us close a cycle. The greater emotional awareness comes from Jupiter conjunct the moon. And closing a cycle is part of the message of a full moon. And there's also a really interesting configuration here with the North Node and the South Node. So we'll talk about that a little bit too. So maybe graduation, a chapter close, and even perhaps a final exam as we get into this stuff. So it is pretty. It is a pretty nice moon, though, I think. What do you think, Kat?
Yeah, it's really good. So the symbols for these 2 degrees, the sun at 29 Leo is a mermaid emerging from the ocean, ready for rebirth in human form. And the moon at 29 Aquarius is a butterfly emerging from a chrysalis. So we have this expression of emergence that is tied to transformation.
What a beautiful message for us right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And this is so much about like shining, emerging and shining and coming out of the dark and the deep and being your true self.
Yes, and very much aligned with the symbology is what we can just read into the placements, because this is in the sign of Aquarius, the sign of the people. That's where our moon is conjunct Jupiter. So we might see, some coming out, for like summer get-togethers, that sort of stuff as well. And we also have this with the sun and Leo itself. And that's always a beautiful time of year for coming out of chrysalis, coming out to others and having fun with others. Leo, the sign of the sun and exaltation. Mm-hmm. So what else do we see here?
Well, we have that conjunction with Jupiter at 26 Aquarius, a garage man testing a car's battery with a hydrometer.
Yeah, a really important time for that. Maybe test our brakes a little bit and don't get a little overinflated. Jupiter is a wonderful, positive overall expression, but too much of a good thing can still be too much of a good thing. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting that it's on that point of check it.
Yeah.
So I think that that's really good. We don't want to get too exuberant or go too overboard, with this moon. And we also have some other lovely configurations going on with this moon as well.
Yeah.
So we've got a beautiful trine that's, these hang on for days, but there is still days. We're still under this trine influence between Saturn and Venus and the south node and the north node. So we've got a lovely kite figuration here.
Right.
And what does Saturn and Venus, bring to mind to you? What's our mythological meanings here, or deeper meanings?
Love and beauty and pleasure and connection for Venus. And Saturn is structure and authority and discipline and boundaries.
So a great configuration for people into, certain kinds of lovemaking.
Mm-hmm.
Structured love, some other interesting things we can think of here. My mind's going in strange directions.
Well, let's look at the symbols. It was Venus is at 7 Libra, a woman feeding chickens and protecting them from the hawks. And
Right.
Saturn at 8 Aquarius, beautifully gowned wax figures on display.
Right, and this is a very protective, the symbology is overall very protective.
Mm-hmm.
Venus being in her home sign of Libra, where she is truly at her best. And Saturn also at home, at least his, originally Saturn was the ruler of Aquarius. So there's some difficulty there for Saturn. Wherever Saturn goes, there's still that sense of restriction or stop, but there's also that sense of structure. And here in Aquarius, it's especially with Jupiter there, that's positive up. So I would call the whole configuration very positive overall, especially with the sextile, with the south node and the kite with the north node. We've got an opportunity to fly with this configuration.
Yeah.
So I wrote down some things. Because they're not going to be immediately to my head here. I'm going to scroll down and look at this configuration to remind me. We've got just another way of looking at the symbols. The moon is conjunct the sun, and that's a full moon.
Opposite.
Opposite. Thank you. At 29 degrees of Aquarius and of Leo, and it's conjunct Jupiter. At least the moon is conjunct Jupiter, and Jupiter is opposite to Mars, loosely opposite to Venus or to Mercury, and those are both trine to Uranus. So we've got a very interesting configuration that pulls in the faster moving planets of Mars and Mercury. All the bigger planets are going retrograde right now. So coming back to our circle again for a second, what we're seeing here is a lot of going back over things, especially wherever you have Aquarius or wherever you have Virgo in your chart. And of course, Gemini is highlighted as well as Sagittarius because of the nodes there. But the big focus here really seems to be in Aquarius. And so taking a look at where your Aquarius house here would be a really good idea. So if you know your rising sign, then you can find out what house your Aquarius is in, and that'll let you know what's being culminated right now, what you might be finishing up, and what might have some lessons there for you, what might have some illumination for you. So just, I think, a good place to look is Aquarius. An interpretation of this, one interpretation of these multifaceted symbols would be get motivated to talk about change. And a question, where did your confidence get lost? And that would again be your Aquarius house. The time frame of this moon is 1 month after August 22nd and through the full moon in Aquarius of February of 2022. Yep. So some of the symbology for the full moon, again, the full moon is illumination, culmination, end of a phase, graduation, kind of graduation time or back to school time. In Aquarius, the people, the future, revolution, maybe radical things, humanitarian things. It's a sign that can be seen as, of the masses, what's for everybody. And this might equal an illumination or a culmination of radical change for the people. So what about our Sabian symbols here? You want to talk about them a little bit more again?
Yeah, the sun in Leo 29, a mermaid emerges from the ocean, ready for rebirth in human form. Moon 29 Aquarius, butterfly emerging from a chrysalis. Jupiter 26 Aquarius, a garage man testing a car's battery with a hydrometer. So the first two symbols opposite each other are transition symbols. The butterfly has to go through that like deconstruction goo phase before it can rebuild itself and become an entirely new thing. And the mermaid emerging from the ocean, again, it's at this like liminal place of she has to move from the water to the earth, from the water to the land. And so there are these symbols that encourage us to make a change, ready ourselves for a change, go through what might be kind of painful in order to find some change. And then that Jupiter, the testing, I mean, you could look at it as like it's a test for the transformation. We talked about this before as like check yourself, like before you go on this journey, like check yourself, check your emotional state, your emotional baggage, and see how prepared you really are.
Yeah, nice. It's really, test those batteries. Do you have enough in there? You need to recharge before you go on this little journey, because you might really go for a ride. And here I'm taking a look at our kite formation, again, between Saturn and Venus. And keep in mind, we've talked a little bit before about the symbology of the arrow and pulling back on the arrow. You're pulling back on two sides of the bow and pulling back far on one end so that you can send an arrow flying. So a way of taking a look at that would be, this would be two ends of the bow, and you'd be pulling back here with the string to let the arrow fly in this direction.
I think I'd go the other way.
You want to go the other way towards the north?
Go the other way, so we go towards the north node.
Yeah, you're right. Sorry, I've got it turned around in my head. You're right. We want to pull back towards the south node and pull forward towards the north node. And that's a lot about what our symbology says here, having to do with Saturn, right? Because Saturn, we've got the old wax bin and gowns, which kind of reminds me of the Supreme Court or something.
Yeah.
Or walking through any gallery, where it's a bunch of traditional things having to do with Saturn. Saturn's very traditional.
Yeah.
That symbolic,
like old movie stars, like the Hollywood Wax Museum of old movie stars, and they're like Oscar gowns.
Oh yeah, there you go too. Yeah, old guys in Oscar gowns. Sure, but the symbology is of something that might be from the past, something that might be very traditional, something that might be pulling back towards the past.
Yeah.
And the other side of our sextile here, our trine, the sextile with the south node, but the other side of the trine is Venus, and Venus is also pulling back here in order to send that arrow across to the north node and to Black Moon Lilith, which is pretty much conjunct the north node there in Gemini. So that's some pretty interesting symbology as well, that we're sending maybe with love you know, with love and tradition, we don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater.
Right.
We want to keep those traditions that are helpful and valuable, and maybe send those into the future, and maintain those, while still perhaps getting rid of the south node here, letting go of, letting a chapter close, and having a graduation.
Mm.
What about the symbology, Kat, for the north node and Lilith?
The north node at 6 degrees Gemini is workmen drilling for oil. And the black moon at 3 degrees Gemini is the garden of the Tuileries in Paris.
Ooh.
Those are both symbols that speak to needing to go deep, or thinking about the wealth that comes from the deep, whether it be oil or gardens. You know, gardens are nothing on the surface without what's underneath that you can't see, you know, and the oil is that resource that's down deep that we can't see. And so to have this in that trine with Venus and Saturn and a kite to the south node, to me speaks to a need to really look at what resources we have maybe suppressed or hidden, and that might be our way forward.
Yeah, very interesting. I really like that. I really like that a lot, because the north node is what wants to, that's the direction we're headed in. And maybe the way we're passionately headed in. It's sometimes visualized and spoken of as the dragon's head. Also, our aspirations and our goals, and maybe our evolutionary intention even. And Black Moon Lilith is that, which is, as you say, repressed, or from the past, or hidden.
Or wild.
Yeah, or wild. And maybe reclaiming, or again, not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, bringing some form of some things forward with us, even if we're not really fully aware of what it is we're bringing forward with us. I mean, this may be something that's really quite subconscious.
Yeah, good point.
So we've also got an interesting configuration going on with Uranus in trine with Mercury and Mars. And this configuration is forming, and will last, because everything is moving forward as we speak, but there's still a momentum to this configuration, especially because Uranus is stationing retrograde, or has just recently stationed retrograde. So this was a fairly powerful configuration between the energy and momentum of Mars, which is a little, let's say, harnessed by hardworking Virgo. Maybe Mars is put into service like a workhorse. Mercury up here is telling Mars what to do. This is what we're going to do, Mercury. This is what we're going to do, Mars. I've got some tasks for you. We're going to change something. Something's going to change pretty drastically. And again, this is where it's pretty interesting to take a look at, where you have Uranus in your chart. Where is Taurus for you? And where is Virgo for you? Because this Earth trine, this is a very earthy trine. So this is a plowman here, or a plow woman, this Taurian, and Virgo knows how to get it done. So a change that is ready to happen, there's energy toward it. We can talk about it, and it may just suddenly, break that wheel out of the mud. There's a possibility for easy change, because it's a trine.
It's a trine.
Yeah. So since we see that it's a trine, the change, Uranus is unexpected like a lightning bolt, and it doesn't mean the easy change is exactly what we wanted, because it doesn't necessarily denote, what's positive or negative in our perception individually. But it would be interesting to see how this is going to play out for us on a larger, social scale, because we've talked about before, Taurus the sign of, food production, all things earthy, but it also is also the slow plodding concept of things like food production. You don't just eat food that is produced instantly. You have to plant a seed and let it grow and harvest it and grind the corn and make some tortillas out of it, and so it's a big process. So to have Uranus there saying that something instant is going to change, that's a little disconcerting, but there's a lot of technology things that are going on that are also very positive there. There's
Well, and it's
sorry,
good
go
to
ahead.
remember too that like what we think of as slow change in the grand scheme of things is actually really fast.
So
Like
true.
something that could take 3 to 10 years to unfold because Uranus moves so slowly and it will be in Taurus for 7 years. From our
Yes,
perspective, it seems really slow, but in like the Earth's perspective, it's a blink.
exactly. So we've got some really interesting positive forward motion in this chart, a real impetus for change here. And, with the kite configuration, we're shooting an arrow towards our future. We're aiming for something, maybe we don't know what we're aiming for, but we're aiming for something. And we've got structure behind us and we've got love behind us. And we also probably have some lessons, some karma, some knowledge from the past, maybe some things we'd like to let go of. And all that's being illuminated at this time with this full moon. And the full moon is going to pull it forward. None of this is, we're taking a look at a snapshot picture of the chart on the 22nd of August, but each day that, moon moves forward. And on the 24th, which is today, the moon is now conjunct Neptune, and Neptune is in opposition here to Mercury. So I was wondering why I lost my previous recording that we did before Kat, and well, at least today is pretty close. Yeah. And again, with these big I can't even speak, megalithic planets, that's wrong, whatever, these giant planets in retrograde. And of course, retrograde does not mean that they're literally moving backwards. It means that from our perspective, they're going backwards. And in fact, they're closer to the Earth than they might otherwise be. And it is seen astrologically that their impact is potentially greater, potentially, depending on which one we're talking about, but the big concept is reviewing. So these are going back over territory they've already been on before, but the moon is moving forward. And the moon right now is here conjunct Neptune. And in just a few days, it will be conjunct Chiron. And there again, we're going to have a lovely configuration with Chiron opposite from Venus at that moment. So the moon is pulling, as it moves forward, this configuration and this symbology along with it. And it's going to pull it into the future so that we're going to have a culmination of the things that we were doing and thinking about here on the 22nd or near then, as we move on forward and get to the 9th of September, when we are back to where the moon and where Mercury and Mars and Venus are now and have just passed by and are just about to pass by as they go over Neptune, we're going to have an awakening as to what all this was about for us personally, and probably about what it's about for us collectively. Mercury's involved in this, so that means this is when, we're talking about things conjunct with Mars, we're doing things, and what we're going to be talking about is going to culminate by about the 7th of September. So look for the 7th of September to be an important time for the results of what it is that you've been doing over the last few days or a week. So I thought, let me scroll down a little bit to some of our meanings. And this is a lot of words, but these are just the, some other meanings for these signs, these symbols. Make it a little bit bigger. We've got the full moon is conjunct Jupiter. Simultaneously, we've got an Earth trine. So the sun is ego, illumination, yang, positive, active, male. We've got the moon, which is emotion, reflection, receptive, yin, negative, passive, female. And Jupiter, good fortune, expansion, growth. Like a magnifying glass, though, you can hold it up a little too close to something and be careful you don't burn it, or magnify something too big in a way that's not realistic, because it does make things larger, sometimes larger than life. And at the same time that we have this going on, we have the Mercury, Mars in Virgo trine with Uranus. And do you want to talk a little bit about the symbology there?
Yeah, okay. So Mars at 14 Virgo is at maybe its most grounded, a family tree. Mercury at 16 Virgo, children crowd around the orangutan cage at a zoo. Uranus at 14 Taurus, an exact trine to Mars at the full moon. On the beach, children play while shellfish grope at the edge of the water. So for this full moon, we have 2 different degrees that are talking about the edge of the water. Both the sun at 29 Leo and now Uranus at 14 Taurus. And we also have 2 degrees talking about children, like a crowd of children, and children in their playful, curious kind of ways. And we also have 2 degrees that are about more than humans. I mean, we have more than that, because there's also the butterfly and the chrysalis and the mermaid. But I think that this Uranus, Mars, Mercury one is interesting, and in conjunction with the family tree, we might want to think about like who we consider kin.
Ooh,
You know?
yeah, and it's very Aquarian. I mean, that symbology is very Aquarian in that sense that, you know, sometimes it's a world family, or our family's our tribe, in the way we think of it that way.
Yeah. Or I like to think even like beyond that, and I consider myself an animist, and so it's like, are the shellfish my kin? Can I think of the shellfish as my relatives? And can I think of the orangutans? It's much easier to think of orangutans as a kind of kinship to humans, not so much shellfish. But when we don't, and we don't take into consideration the needs of other species, then we're ending up with the kind of crises that we have right now.
Exactly. Exactly. And the research that they've done on octopi,
Yeah.
Oh my, to be an octopi, I mean, to have a whole mind in each little finger and have hundreds of little fingers, they're just incredible and clearly conscious.
Right.
So yeah, our whole perception here is, and maybe that's part of the illumination that we are going through as a species and as a planet, is, you know, people are literally, you know, trying to send themselves towards the stars. But what's really interesting is where we are. And the more we get to know each other, the less likely we are to kill ourselves off. So, you know, I've heard some very positive news, could be positive because it depends on what we do with it, that they ran a bunch of computer Uranus models about what our life would be like collectively, Aquarius, if we were to start taking active steps, like right this second, to fix global warming. And so they, you know, ran it with a bunch of different simulations. What if we did this, you know, got rid of all cars and airplanes and only used, you know, what if we did this? And so they ran a bunch of simulations, and they found that, just like you might expect, there are dozens of ways that we can fix this. It really just depends on how motivated we are and if we're able to pull it together to pick one of them, or maybe multiples of them, and you know, work on that and do something. So I mean, but there was some positive information I saw there, because And I see it also in the symbology of this moon, because there's a lot of power with Mars and Mercury. Mars and Mercury gets things done in Virgo, especially when it's in Trine. It might be easy, you know, you want it to be easy if it's Virgo, for Pete's sake, because there's the taskmaster right there, and the taskmaster has, you know, a powerful tool here. What's being illuminated, the sun and moon is illuminating with the help of Jupiter, make it nice and big, how we have to get this work done. And Uranus and Taurus is showing us where the change needs to happen. You know, it needs to happen in how we relate to the earth. You know, that's very clear. I pulled one meaning out of this, and of course there are many meanings that one can pull out of this, but the illumination or exposure, the full moon, of a radical change, Uranus, for the people, Aquarius, creates great emotion for the masses, full moon plus Jupiter. And people are motivated, Mars, to talk about it, Mercury, and how it relates to health and practicality, Virgo. Active, reactive speech is symbolized by that Mars and Mercury combination. And the Mars and Mercury is not gonna go away. Let me scoot back up there again for a second. Did I put it there? No, it's down here. Sorry, there it is. The Mercury-Mars conjunction is, we had just one Mercury-Mars conjunction a moment ago. And on October the 9th, we're going to have it again. And then we'll have it again on the 10th of November. And that's it. And then it won't happen again until the end of 2023. So there's a message here in this Mercury-Mars conjunction that obviously, you know, we might want to pay attention to, since it's pretty prominent. So some symbology there for, again, for Mercury and Mars, you know, energy, passion, movement. It also symbolizes cutting out, communication, mental movement. Mercantile, the trickster is Mercury. Those things together can imply, you know, cutting speech. Be careful, you know, that we are not hurtful in our speech. If somebody wanted to have surgery, now might be a good time to do it. You know, if you're gonna have elective surgery, it's in Virgo. That's a nice, precise.
If you can get into a hospital.
If you could, that's right. And there's where I see a lot of this meaning is, you know, this is also a place where a lot of people are talking now and probably in the future about the disinformation that is created, the next outbreak, you know, the current surge in COVID. And I think that people are going to get motivated to talk about it more based on what we see in the symbology. And what we're talking about is how it relates to health and practicality. But there can be some very reactive speech.
Oh, yes.
So I'm afraid that that's a possibility. Let's look at that grand trine a little bit more with the kite. Saturn symbolizes structure, maybe how we're stuck. It could be a big stop sign. It definitely tells us to slow down, and it offers perspective. It also makes things realistic. Without Saturn, there's no backbone, right? There's everything's just squishy. Venus, on the other hand, represents love and beauty, the desired, anything that we value, anything that we adore, or you know, that brings us joy. And together in a trine with the North Node, new growth, moving towards the future, maybe gobbling up that future as quick as we can, and an evolutionary intention in Gemini, perhaps as Gemini symbolizes the twins and diversity. So, you know, maybe opening up towards a more diverse future with this trine. And a meaning there, one meaning we might have is an ease trine in imagining Neptune. Neptune is involved in this as well, as we saw and we'll look at again. A desire for a solid, serious value, a distant love, a true love, structured beauty, a stone rose. I was kind of grasping at symbology for Venus and Saturn. Do you want to throw a couple out there? You have any ideas for Venus and Saturn?
Oh, nothing's coming to mind. Boundaries? Having
What was,
good boundaries in love?
yeah, boundaries in love, perfect.
Mhm.
What was the Frozen princess, the princess in Frozen?
Oh, my kids aren't that young.
Yeah, her.
Bella or something? I don't know.
Maybe heat and cold a little bit there.
Mhm.
But in that trine configuration again, and Saturn tamed with the nearness of Jupiter, I think this is a pretty positive, especially with the symbology um, that you brought up that looks at like we have some real protection, even
Yeah,
from the old gowned figures.
yeah.
What else do you think? We'll go back
Well,
up
I
here.
like that south node being at Cupid knocking on the door of the human heart.
Oh, right. That's beautiful.
Yeah,
Yeah. Cupid knocking on the door of the human heart.
right,
And that's part of our kite formation.
right.
Uh-huh.
That's from the past.
Right.
Just seems like a super supportive energy to come from the past.
It does. We're pulling back on that bow and, finding some, maybe some real support from the past and a reminder of how we might move forward with some love
Yeah.
and structure.
It makes me think of that saying from about the ancestors that we're the ones we've been waiting for, or we're the ones that they were praying for.
Yeah. Yeah. That's nice. We're the ones we've been waiting for. I like that. Well, I think the only thing left to really talk about here is Uranus, which is always the elephant in the room because it's all year long in this square with Saturn,
Right.
And again, the moon is going to move over Chiron, and then shortly after it will hit Uranus. And when it hits Uranus, again, we're going to have some reminder of what it is that this is all about.
Mm-hmm.
And then it will pull forward and it'll hit the node. The moon will hit the north node and Lilith. And there's emotion when we have the moon involved in things. So this might be a time of maybe some heightened emotions, could be some revelation there.
Yeah.
And then as the moon pulls into the configuration of the placement again of Sun, Mercury, Mars, and then conjuncting with Venus in early September, this is going to kind of play out for us, and we'll see what this theme has been about. And the Uranus part of this, again, it's our defining aspect because it's been square Saturn the whole year, and our dates are June 14th. It was exact, and it will be exact again on December the 24th.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't kind of move out of this fast. We're kind of, as I talked about last time, I think like a record, a DJ scratching on the record, going back and forth over the same spot. And we're just getting a repeat as we review and re-examine and rethink about and all this stuff with Uranus and Saturn.
Yeah, so it'd probably be good to like take a look and see what people have in those degrees of like 10 to 18 of Taurus, something like that. In that like
Exactly.
middle of Taurus section and see what you've got because it's gonna be hitting that again and again and again. Like for me, that's where my natal Chiron is.
Right.
And so it's like a year of here's your deepest, darkest wound. and, and we'll come back to that in a few months. And then we'll come back to it again. So,
Well, at least we're not examining it all at once, just a little
yeah,
at a time.
a little at a time. A little at a time. Yeah. And then like bandage it up and Check on it again later.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think that the 10 to 14 degrees, Taurus, and also its opposite in Scorpio, that's where people need to be really focusing, because the Taurus, the change may be reflected in the Scorpio house.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
So whatever change is going to happen may be going on in that house. So that's why, again, it's also good to know your rising sign, so you know what house it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've got my second house is Scorpio. My Scorpio is my second house. So I'm expecting, you know, change in the pocketbook. So perhaps anyway, that would be the potential meaning of a second house change, or change in how I value things.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can find maybe a deeper meaning if you know what the house symbol is for you as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, but we do have some big changes coming, and this is a really positive moon overall. I think it's one that we can dig deep in, and we know that you know, forewarned is forearmed.
Yeah.
We have a strong Mercury Mars in Virgo. Use it while you can. Get what you need to do done with the ease of this trine, so you can, because after Mars moves into Libra, you know, then that's not the best sign for Mars to be in. It's not as happy there. Our configurations won't be as lovely, and things might be a little bit more challenging when we get to that place. So I guess my advice for this moon would be take advantage of it while you can.
Yeah.
Well, thanks you guys for watching us. Thanks, Kat.
Thanks, Micki.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye. There, I left us on.
Okay. In case we say something smart.
Well, I'm just trying. Okay, it is still recording. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm gonna